Get your black behind out of that seat. You ain't supposed to be sitting there. The words cracked through the air like a whip, loud enough for every fork in the roadside diner to freeze midair. It was 6:42 p.m. on a humid Mississippi evening, Highway 49, stretching dusty and tired outside, when Elijah Brooks, 74 years old and older than half the men who ever disrespected him, looked up from his plate of fried catfish. He didn't look angry, didn't flinch, didn't tremble. But the rest of the diner did. Standing over him was Kyle Maddox, a broad-shouldered biker in a faded leather vest, the kind covered in patches from clubs that made decent folks lock their doors. His boots were still muddy from the road, his knuckles scarred, his voice thick with the kind of confidence only a man who's never been challenged carries. Behind Kyle were 3 more bikers, all white, all smirking, all blocking the aisle like they owned the place. The waitress young, red-haired, trying hard not to be noticed, froze halfway to Elijah's table. Her pen slipped from her hand, clattering on the tile. Half the diners looked away. The other half watched with that uneasy southern silence, own that said they'd seen this kind of thing before and didn't want trouble. Elijah hadn't asked for trouble. He'd only come to Mason's truck stop diner just outside Yazoo City for a quiet meal after driving 98 miles from Jackson to visit his late wife's grave. The man smelled of Old Spice and engine oil, wore a button-up shirt tucked neatly into worn jeans, and had the kind of slow, steady presence that comes from living long enough to bury friends, brothers in arms, and dreams. But to Kyle, he was just an old black man in the wrong place. Kyle slapped Elijah's cup of sweet tea off the table. It exploded across the floor, ice skittering like glass. I said, "Move. This booth's for our crew. You deaf or just dumb?" A few people gasped. A middle-aged white couple quietly slid their check toward the edge of their table, ready to leave. No one stepped in. No one ever stepped in. Elijah exhaled slowly through his nose, the way a man does when he's trying to bury a lifetime of memories, some good, many ugly. He had marched for civil rights in the 70s, served in the Army in his 20s, spent decades building cars at a Ford plant until his back gave out. He'd been called names before. Had doors slammed in his face, had banks question his money, had neighbors clutch their purses when he walked too close. But this being treated like a trespasser at a cheap diner cut deeper than the slap to his dignity. Kyle grabbed Elijah's shoulder. That was when the diner truly went silent, a silence thick enough for a man to hear his own heartbeat. A silence heavy like the humid Mississippi air right before a storm. Elijah didn't raise his voice, didn't stand, didn't swing. He simply turned his head and met Kyle's eyes calm, steady, unreadable. That calm infuriated Kyle. "What you looking at, old man?" Elijah finally spoke, his tone steady as steel polished by time. "I'm looking at someone who doesn't know what he just started." A ripple moved through the diner. Kyle laughed, too loud, too confident, and slapped Elijah across the face. The impact echoed off the chrome and linoleum like a gunshot. The waitress gasped. Someone whispered, "Lord help him." Another muttered, "Don't get involved, don't get involved." Elijah didn't touch his cheek, didn't even blink twice. Instead, he reached into the pocket of his shirt, pulled out an old flip phone, no smartphone, no fancy case, just a scratched-up relic with a cracked screen. He opened it with one hand, thumbed out a single coded message, Alpha Delta active, ETA. He snapped the phone shut and set it calmly beside his empty plate. The bikers scoffed. A few customers exchanged confused looks. One elderly vet in the corner stiffened, as if he recognized something in those words. But Kyle didn't notice any of it. He leaned in close, breath hot with arrogance. "You think somebody's coming to save you?" Elijah looked out the window toward the gravel parking lot, where the sunset bled orange across the hoods of pickup trucks. "No," he said quietly. "Not save me." He lifted his gaze, calm as a man certain of the ground beneath him. "Save you." And somewhere outside, faint but growing, the gravel began to tremble. What nobody inside that diner knew, not Kyle, not the scared waitress, not even the folks too afraid to help, was that Elijah's quiet message had already set something unstoppable in motion, and in just a few minutes the ground beneath their feet would shake hard enough to change everything they thought they knew. Kyle didn't back off after the slap. If anything, the hit seemed to fuel him. His buddies spread out around Elijah's booth like wolves staking a kill. The neon sign buzzing overhead flickered, casting sharp blue shadows across their jackets. Every patch, every skull emblem, every stitched phrase screamed trouble. "Look at him," one biker snickered. "Old man think he's special or something." Another added, "Probably thinks he one of them civil rights heroes from back in the day." The whole booth shook with their laughter. Elijah didn't move, didn't give them the satisfaction. Inside, though, a different storm churned. He felt the sting on his cheek, but the deeper sting came from the room itself, from the silence, the hesitation, the sideways glances. Those were familiar. He'd grown up in Mississippi. He knew that silence better than most people knew prayer. Mississippi racism wasn't always shouted. It sat in rooms like this quiet, observing, nodding along with the loud ones. The young waitress hovered near the kitchen door, hands shaking around her notepad. She wanted to help. Elijah could see it in her eyes. But he could also see the fear. "I'm sorry," she mouthed silently when Kyle wasn't looking. Across the diner, a black couple sat near the window, the husband gripping his wife's hand under the table. He wanted to stand up, but life had taught him caution. His eyes met Elijah's for a split second, an apology in them, a plea, a shared understanding. 3 teenagers filmed from their booth, whispering, hoping drama would go viral. Elijah swallowed the familiar bitterness. Even now, he thought, folks still watching hurt like it's TV. Kyle leaned closer, his breath sour with beer and road grit. "What kind of code was that?" he mocked, imitating Elijah typing on his flip phone. "You calling for backup? Calling Jesus? Calling your little church choir?" His buddies burst out laughing again. But then something shifted. One of the older customers, white, gray beard, a Vietnam vet, cap leaned forward. He'd been quiet until now, but the tension was starting to eat through him. He squinted at Elijah, recognition dawning like a slow sunrise. "That flip phone," the man muttered, "and that leather wristband. Hold on now." Kyle turned sharply. "The hell you looking at, old-timer?" The veteran raised his hands defensively. "Nothing, son. Just saying. That code he used, I ain't heard that since shut it," Kyle growled. "Ain't nobody talking to you." The veteran swallowed hard and sat back, but his eyes stayed glued on Elijah Honeyasy, respectful, almost fearful. He knew something. Something Kyle didn't. Something Elijah hoped no one in this diner would recognize too soon. Elijah slowly wiped the sweat from his brow. Mississippi evenings always carried the weight of thick, humid air, but today the weight felt heavier. He had survived things much darker than this diner, but age did things to a man. His body didn't move like it used to. His heartbeat wasn't as steady. And he hated, truly hated, being reminded of that. Kyle drummed his fingers on the table. "You got 10 seconds, Kyle said. "Get up out of that seat or we'll drag you out." He started counting. 10, 9, 8. Elijah breathed in, slow and steady. 7, 6, 5. The couple near the window clenched hands tighter. 4, 3. Elijah opened his eyes. A calm washed over him. Not the calm of someone giving up, but the kind of calm that comes from knowing what's coming next is already set in motion. He looked at Kyle with a steady gaze, the kind that unnerved even the bravest men. "I ain't moving," Elijah said. "And you ain't ready." Kyle smirked. "For what?" Elijah nodded toward the dusty windows. "For whatever's coming down that road." Kyle scoffed, but his friends turned to look. For the first time, a faint tremor rippled through the gravel lot, so soft it could have been imagined. But Elijah knew better. He'd felt that kind of vibration before, years ago, overseas, in places most Americans couldn't point to on a map. He inhaled deeply. 8 minutes since the slap. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. The silence grew sharper. The tension crept up the spine of everyone in the diner. Kyle frowned. What the hell is that? Elijah didn't answer. He didn't need to. Outside, the gravel shifted again. This time, everyone felt it. Just when the diner thought the worst had passed, the ground trembled again stronger this time. Heads snapped toward the window as headlights carved through the darkness, moving in a formation no ordinary drivers could pull off. And in that moment, Kyle realized something far bigger than him was coming. The tremor rolling through the gravel outside wasn't loud yet, but it was enough to make the salt shaker on Elijah's table rattle, enough to make the neon lights buzz a little harder. enough to make every pair of eyes shift from the old man to the windows facing the highway. Kyle scoffed, but his confidence cracked for the first time. "Probably just some old semi rolling by," one biker muttered, adjusting the chain on his belt as if it might make him feel safer. Elijah didn't react. He sat with his hands folded neatly, the flip phone still on the table, screen dark, message sent. His jaw was tight now, but not with fear, with focus. The same kind of focus he had the night he was deployed to Kandahar, the same focus he had when he supervised federal rescue teams during the 1993 floods, the same focus that made people whisper his name even years after he disappeared from the public eye. But none of that mattered to Kyle. Not yet. Kyle leaned in again, trying to reclaim the moment. "Man, you ain't scaring nobody. All that code stuff, old man delusions, you ain't special out here." Elijah's eyes stayed on the window. "You keep thinking that," he replied, voice calm, even gentle. It was the kind of gentleness that made Kyle's stomach twist for a reason he couldn't name. Across the room, the Vietnam vet one with the weathered leather cap leaned forward again. "That wasn't no semi," he whispered to his wife. "Semis don't make the ground hum before you hear the engine." Kyle snapped, "Shut up, old man!" But his voice didn't carry the same swagger as before. It carried something else. A tremor he didn't want anyone to notice. Elijah shifted in his seat, his back straightening slowly like a man preparing for something inevitable. The gold dog tag tucked under his shirt glinted when he moved, too clean to be just a fashion piece. The waitress noticed, her eyes widening. "That tag," she murmured, more to herself than to him. "That's military issue, but different." The vet nodded, voice low. "Not just military, special operations, real special, stuff they don't talk about on the news." A biker laughed. "Man, please. This old dude ain't no secret agent. He a grandpa with a busted truck." But the vet didn't laugh. "Elijah Brooks," he whispered, recognition hitting him like a truck. "I've seen that name. Back in '89. Disaster Response Division, one of the last deep field commanders before they retired the whole unit." The waitress gasped. A nearby trucker dropped his French fry. The black couple exchanged a shocked glance. Kyle blinked. "Man, y'all buying this movie script?" But one of the younger bikers, barely 25, leaned closer to Kyle. "Bro, I'm just saying. What if Kyle shut him up with a glare? Ain't no what if. He alone." "We 4 deep." "4 deep," Elijah repeated under his breath, almost with pity. "Lord have mercy." The gravel rumbled again, stronger this time. A coffee cup skidded half an inch on the table. Phones vibrated. Even the lights flickered like someone was power cycling the whole diner. Kyle spun around and stared out the window. "What the hell is that?" The vet inhaled sharply, color draining from his face. "It's a convoy," he whispered. "A small one. Fast movers." The waitress backed up until she hit the pie display case. "You mean government?" Elijah kept his gaze fixed on the road. "They close," he said softly. "Closer than he expects." Kyle turned back, fury and fear mixing on his face. "You calling in the cops?" "No," Elijah answered. "Cops don't come this fast." 2 of the bikers exchanged nervous looks. They weren't scared of law enforcement. They were scared of what they didn't understand. "You lying," Kyle snapped. "Ain't nobody showing up for you." Elijah finally looked him straight in the eyes. "I didn't call them for me," he said. "I called them because I knew this was coming." Kyle swallowed, throat dry. "What's coming?" Elijah spoke so quietly, the whole diner had to lean in to hear it. Consequences. At that exact moment, headlights swept across the parking lot 3 sets, synchronized, moving too smooth, too precise to be civilian. Engines low and heavy, suspension tight, tires crunching gravel like approaching thunder. The vet whispered, "Oh, Lord, that's tactical-grade suspension." The whole diner held its breath. Even Kyle did. Elijah didn't look away from the window as he murmured 9 minutes. And right on cue, the parking lot shook. For a moment, nobody in Mason's truck stop diner moved. Not Kyle. Not his biker crew. Not the families pressed against their booths. Not even the waitress clutching her apron like a shield. The headlights outside cut sharp lines through the dusty window blinds, sweeping across Elijah's still face. 3 vehicles rolled into the gravel lot, 2 pickup trucks leading, 1 black SUV trailing behind. They didn't roar in recklessly like biker gangs. They slid into formation, smooth, clean, purposeful, too purposeful. Kyle tried to laugh, but his voice cracked. Probably just some dudes looking for gas. Elijah didn't even blink. "That ain't how regular folks park," he murmured. The Vietnam vet nodded slowly. "Those drivers, they ain't civilians. Watch the spacing. Watch the timing. That's trained." Kyle forced his bravado back into place. "Man, shut up. Y'all making up ghost stories." But his right hand twitched. A subtle tremor, just enough to betray him. Elijah could see the shift. He'd seen it in combat zones and flood zones and wildfire zones men who thought they owned the world until the world reminded them otherwise. Outside, the 2 pickups cut their engines simultaneously. The SUV idled, humming low like it had bigger lungs than any vehicle should. The diner lights flickered again. Kyle looked around at his crew, hoping for backup, but even they looked uneasy now. "Okay," one biker muttered. "That's weird." "Too weird," another added. They stood like men suddenly aware they were being watched by something bigger than their jackets, patches, and loud voices. Then the first pickup door opened. A man stepped out, tall, broad, with the kind of posture you couldn't fake. He wore jeans, boots, and a gray t-shirt, but the way he scanned the surroundings was all tactical, controlled, efficient. The second pickup door opened. A woman this time. Dark sunglasses, even though the sun had already dipped, hair braided tight. Her movements smooth like she'd trained her muscles to say, "Don't mess with me." Behind them, the SUV turned off at last. The air shifted. Something heavy in that silence. Elijah exhaled, slow, steady, his shoulders barely rising. He knew that rhythm. Kyle didn't. "What they friends of yours?" Kyle barked, voice too loud. Elijah looked up at him calmly. "They colleagues." Kyle blinked. "Colleagues? You ain't got no colleagues." The vet corrected him with a soft, trembling voice. "Boy, you don't understand. That tag he dropped earlier, I remember those units. Those were deep units. Units that don't do public appearances." The waitress whispered, "Like government?" The vet shook his head slowly. "No, deeper than government." The diner's tension thickened. Outside, the back doors of the SUV swung open at the same time, synchronized. 2 more individuals stepped out, dressed casual but standing like they were born for crisis. The woman from the pickup spoke into her wrist no visible device, but her lips moved with purpose. The man from the first pickup looked toward the diner, then nodded once. Kyle swallowed hard. "What the hell is this?" Elijah finally moved. He reached down and picked up his old flip phone. His hand didn't shake, not a bit. He clipped it to his belt calmly, like a man clocking out of work. "Back in the day," Elijah said softly, "when things went bad real bad, there were only a handful of people they'd call." He stood up, slow, deliberate. Not like an old man with aching joints, but like a leader who had never forgotten what it meant to command. "You don't retire from responsibility," he continued. "You just stop wearing the uniform." Kyle stepped back without meaning to. "Man, what did you do? Who are they?" Elijah's eyes found his. "They're here because of what you did." The bikers froze. Outside, the group formed a perimeter. Not hostile, but protective around one man. "Elijah," Kyle's voice shook now, full fear cracking through the tough guy shell. You called them for backup?" Elijah shook his head. "I didn't call backup. I called witnesses." Kyle frowned in confusion. Elijah leaned closer. "You said I didn't belong here. You said I ain't special. But son, I helped build the damn playbook y'all scared of." The Vietnam vet whispered one word under his breath. "Commander." Kyle stumbled back. His biker friends hovered uselessly behind him. No plan, no power, no way out. The tremor outside settled into silence. But the fear inside the diner, that only got louder. "Hi, friend. Before we continue, I need your help. We've noticed the channel losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and helps us keep delivering great content for you. Your support means everything. Comment your city or country below. Let's see how far this community reaches. Thank you now. Back to the story. Kyle Maddox had talked big his whole life, but right now, he couldn't string together a single word. The gravel outside Mason's truck stop diner vibrated again, this time in a deep, steady rhythm. Not chaotic like roaring bikes, not slow like farm trucks. This was something else. Something trained. Something intentional. Something that made the air itself tighten. The tall man from the first pickup took the lead, walking toward the diner with slow, measured steps. Not threatening, just certain. The braided hair woman flanked him on the right, her sunglasses now tucked into her shirt collar. Two more figures from the SUV fanned out behind them, scanning the lot with the calm efficiency of people who'd been trained not to panic ever. Inside, nobody breathed. The waitress covered her mouth with both hands. The Vietnam vet sat ramrod straight. The black couple squeezed each other's fingers until their knuckles turned white. Kyle's voice finally cracked out of him. "What? What are they doing?" Elijah looked at him, and the softness in his gaze almost made the moment scarier. "They're assessing the scene. That's what they trained for." "For what?" Kyle barked, trying to claw back some control. "For people who escalate situations they don't understand." Kyle's jaw tightened. "Man, quit speaking in riddles. Who are they?" Elijah didn't answer. He didn't have to. The diner door swung open with a soft jingle, a sound far too gentle compared to the weight of the moment. The tall man stepped inside first. His eyes scanned the room, landing on Elijah immediately. His posture shifted barely, but enough for anyone watching closely to see respect settle into his shoulders. "Commander Brooks," the man said, voice level. Alpha Delta confirmed. "Perimeter secure." Gasps rippled through the diner. "Commander, not Mister, not Sir, Commander." Kyle stumbled backward, bumping into one of his own men. "Commander, what? He ain't know he old. He got a flip phone." The braided hair woman entered next. Timestamp matched. Response within 9 minutes, per protocol. 9 minutes. The whole diner froze again. That was the number Elijah had murmured. The number the mysterious code had hinted at. The number nobody believed. The man who spoke first continued, "We received your signal." The team mobilized immediately. Kyle shook his head violently. "Signal? Man, that ain't even a smartphone. Who are y'all supposed to be?" The braided hair woman walked past Kyle like he was a ghost. Her attention was locked on Elijah. She stopped 3 feet away and lowered her voice, not out of weakness, but out of respect. "We thought you'd never call again," she said. "But you made the right choice tonight." Elijah breathed out slowly, the weight of decades pressing and unpressing his chest. "I didn't call because of me," he said. "I called because this place still got folks who think a man's skin tells him what seat he can sit in." The diner went silent, heavy, raw, undeniable. Kyle snapped. "Man, so what? They your little retirement club or something? You too scared to fight your own battles?" The tall man turned to Kyle then. Not fast, not aggressive. Just a slow turn that carried more power than a punch. "For the record," he said evenly, "Commander Brooks fought battles long before you were even born. And he didn't need backup then either." Kyle scoffed, but the edge was gone. "Ain't nobody scared of y'all." "You should be," the braided woman said gently. "Not because we're here, but because you don't understand the consequences of what you did." Her words hung in the air. Kyle's biker friends shifted nervously, looking for exits that no longer existed. The man from the SUV, heavyset, calm, stood near the door now. He wasn't blocking it. Didn't have to. His presence alone said leaving wasn't an option. The tall man stepped closer to Elijah. "Do you want to file a formal report?" he asked. "We have body cams outside, parking lot footage, witnesses. Hate crime division is already on standby." Kyle's eyes widened at those 2 words. Hate crime. "I want accountability," Elijah said. "Nothing more." The tall man nodded. "Then that is what will happen." Suddenly, one of the bikers reached for Kyle's jacket. "Bro, we need to go, now!" Kyle jerked away, panic clawing through his bravado. "They can't do nothing. We ain't done nothing illegal." The braided hair woman raised an eyebrow. "You assaulted a 74-year-old man because of his race. You escalated a public threat, and your actions caused us to initiate a federal response protocol." The heavyset man added, "Your night is about to get very long." Kyle's face drained of color. For the first time since walking into the diner, he realized he wasn't the one in control, not even close. Elijah stood slowly, pressing his palm against the table for balance. His back straightened with that old strength that came not from muscles, but from surviving too much to ever bow to disrespect. He looked at Kyle with a sadness deeper than anger. You could have sat down, could have ate your meal, could have minded your business, but you chose violence. Kyle swallowed hard. Man, I didn't know who you was. That's the problem, Elijah said. You thought you had to know who I was before you decided whether I deserved respect. The braided woman whispered, Commander? Well said. Outside, the convoy lights glowed bright, casting long shadows across the diner floor. Inside, Kyle Maddox's world was collapsing, and for the first time in his life, he had no idea how to stop it. For the first time since the whole mess started, the diner felt like it could breathe again. Not because the tension disappeared, no, that tension was still hanging heavy above every table like Mississippi humidity. But now the room understood something. This wasn't just some old man. This wasn't just some bar fight. This wasn't just some biker showing off. This was a reckoning, and everyone could feel it. Kyle Maddox, who an hour ago strutted into Mason's truck stop like he owned the air people breathed, now stood with his back pressed against the booth, chest rising and falling too fast. His eyes darted to every corner of the diner as if looking for an escape route that simply didn't exist anymore. The tall man, Elijah's former colleague, turned to him fully. Mr. Maddox, he said calmly, you are being detained for questioning. For questioning? Kyle stammered. Man, I didn't even hit him that hard. The heavyset man from the SUV corrected him, voice deep and steady. You assaulted a senior citizen. You targeted him based on race. Multiple witnesses heard racial intent. That qualifies as a hate crime under Mississippi law. Kyle's face went ghost white. One of his biker friends tried to step forward. Man, y'all overreacting. It was just words. Just a slap. The braided hair woman's eyebrow lifted. A slap that triggered a federal response protocol. Words that escalated a threat environment. Behavior consistent with violent extremist patterns. She tilted her head. You want me to keep going? The biker stepped back instantly. Elijah stood quietly, watching everything unfold with an expression people in the diner couldn't quite read. Not pride, not revenge, not satisfaction. Something deeper, something heavier, like a man who'd seen too many versions of this same scene play out across decades in different forms, different faces, different towns, same sickness. The waitress slowly approached Elijah, her voice trembling. Sir, I'm so sorry. I should have stopped it. I should have said something. Elijah gently held up a hand. Baby girl, you ain't responsible for the hate in another man's heart. He paused. But next time, don't freeze. Speak up, even if your voice shakes. Her eyes filled and she nodded hard. The black couple near the window stood. The husband walked to Elijah, his voice thick. Sir, you handled that with more grace than most men would have. Elijah gave him a small smile. Grace is something I had to learn the hard way. Meanwhile, outside the diner, two of the operatives positioned by the vehicles were already speaking quietly into comm devices. Not frantic, not aggressive, just formal, standard. The tall man turned to Elijah. Commander Brooks, per protocol, we'll transfer video recordings and statements to the Hate Crimes Division. Do you wish to be present during processing? Elijah shook his head. I ain't going back into no interrogation room. Not tonight. He hesitated. Too many memories in rooms like that. Too many years watching justice skip over folks who look like me. The operative nodded with the kind of respect earned, not taught. We'll handle everything. You just say the word. Kyle's breathing turned ragged. Man, Commander, sir, I didn't know who you was. If I knew, Elijah's voice cut in. Quiet, but razor sharp. And that right there is the issue. You shouldn't need to know who a black man is to decide he deserves respect. Kyle wilted. No comeback. No attitude. Just silence. The braided woman stepped closer. Sir, if you'd like, we can escort you home, or anywhere you need to go. Elijah shook his head again. Nah, I'm driving myself. I came here alone. I'll leave the same way. But he gave her a grateful nod gesture that said he respected her, not because of her position, but because of what she represented. Loyalty, protection, honor. The operatives started cuffing Kyle. His hands shook as the cold metal clicked around his wrists. You can't do this, one of his buddies yelled. The heavy-set man turned calmly. We just did. A biker tried to approach Elijah one last time, maybe to apologize, maybe to bargain. Elijah lifted a hand again this time with the weight of a command that echoed decades of leadership. Son, don't. The biker froze mid-step, then stepped back. The tall operative nodded to Elijah once more. We'll be in touch with updates, Elijah replied. I trust y'all, still do. As they escorted Kyle out, the gravel crunched beneath their boots. The convoy lights washed over the diner's front windows, bright, clean, unbroken beams that cut through the deep Mississippi night. People watched in absolute silence as the man who came in loud and hateful was taken out in handcuffs, staring at Elijah like he'd just met a ghost. Elijah didn't celebrate. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply reached for his coat, slipped it over his shoulders, and whispered to himself, Lord, let this be the last time. But deep down, he knew better. In Mississippi, stories like this didn't end. They only paused until the next time someone thought a black man didn't belong. The night air outside Mason's truck stop diner held that quiet Mississippi heaviness, the kind that settles deep in your bones when something bigger than you just happened. The convoy's taillights faded down Highway 49, taking Kyle Maddox and his swagger with them, leaving behind only dust and a silence that felt different. Inside the diner, people slowly returned to themselves. The waitress wiped her cheeks. The Vietnam vet pulled off his cap and held it against his chest. The black couple whispered a prayer under their breath. Even the teenagers who'd been recording earlier shut their phones off, suddenly aware of the weight of what they'd witnessed. And Commander Elijah Brooks, stood alone by the door, watching the dust settle. He didn't look triumphant. He didn't look relieved. He looked tired. A deep, old kind of tired that no amount of justice ever fully lifts. The waitress approached him again. Sir, can I at least pack you something to go? You didn't eat much. Elijah managed a small smile. Thank you, sweetheart, but I'm good. Just need to get back on the road. You sure you safe driving alone? She asked softly. Elijah chuckled. Baby, I've been safe longer than most folks realize. As he stepped outside, the Vietnam vet called after him. Commander Brooks, you ever think the world will get better? For men like us? Elijah paused on the top step. The highway wind rustled his jacket. For a moment, he looked like the young commander he once was, staring down impossible choices in places Americans never saw on TV. Then he turned back, eyes gentle but firm. It gets better every time somebody stands up, he said, and every time somebody refuses to stay silent. The vet nodded slowly, swallowing emotion. The black couple smiled at Elijah with that quiet, respectful look only people who've lived through the same storms can give each other. Elijah walked to his old pickup paint-chipped engine humming low, the kind of truck that had seen more miles than most men had seen dreams. He opened the door, then looked back at the diner one last time. The people inside weren't the same people who watched him get slapped in silence 40 minutes earlier. Something had changed. Something subtle, but real. A seed planted. A truth revealed. A silence broken. He slid into the driver's seat, tapped the dashboard, and whispered, Mary, I hope I made you proud tonight. Then he started the engine, turned onto Highway 49, and disappeared into the long Mississippi Darcone old black man carrying decades of history, dignity, scars, and wisdom down a road that never seemed to end. Behind him, Mason's truck stop diner glowed brighter than usual, like the walls themselves understood a lesson had been learned. Respect ain't earned by rank. It ain't earned by age. It ain't earned by fear. It's earned by remembering we all deserve it, no matter the color of our skin. Hi, friend, before you go, if this story moved you, if it made you feel something, if it reminded you why respect matters, please hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling us what city or country you're watching from, and share this video so more people around the world can hear stories that deserve to be heard. Your support helps keep stories like this alive. Thank you for being here.